Today is October 31st, 2008. We're meeting today with Mr. Max Hobbs at his home in Greeley, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Max, and thanks for participating today.
You're welcome.
Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family.
Well, I was born in March 11th, 1924. I was born out in the New Raymer, Buckingham area, which is about 20 miles south of Pawnee Buttes. I lived there. I went to grade school there, and then my father got a job here in Greeley, and we moved to the Greeley area and went to the schools here. And that is where I went in from the service, was here in Greeley. My brother went to the service before I did. He was with the CCC camps up in northern Colorado, and when the war started, they inducted the whole CC camps, and they all went to the 90th Infantry Division, and he went to North Africa, Sicily, and Italy. Well, I was 4 or 5 years younger, and then of course the war broke out in high school. A lot of us were dropping out. A lot of us were going to the service.
Do you remember where you were when you heard that that Pearl Harbor had been bombed?
Yes, I was at home on 13th Street in Greeley, and I come over the radio, and my brother and I was sitting there. He was on leave from CC camp, and we just couldn't believe what was happening. And so then the schools picked up on it, you know, on the war and in the General MacArthur thing. And so I was halfway through my 12th grade, and I thought, well, I'll enlist. So I dropped out of school, and I forget how that went. But anyway, going back to when I was in grade school, a little kid, we lived out at New Raymer, and I was really very sick for the first 3 years of school. So 1 year of school, the teachers decided to hold me back and start, you know, because of tonsillitis and that noise. And so therefore, when I got to the high school age, I was a year older than the most of the kids.
Okay.
They were 17, I was 18. So the draft board had set up any student that is 18 and drops out of school is eligible for the draft. They can be drafted. So that I dropped out in, I don't know, April or May, decided to join, and I didn't join. So then the draft picked up on me, and I went in June. Either way, I would have went in June. And we left from...
So you got drafted into the Army, correct?
Right.
Okay.
And then there was there used to be a bus depot on 13th Street and 8th Avenue. And that's where my father took me down to get on the bus, and I went into Denver, Fort Logan. That's where I was inducted. And then we got, you know, we got all our haircuts. You went into the barber shop, and they, well, how do you want your haircut today? And then, everything was gone. So we stayed there a week or so until they processed us, and then they...
Now, did you go down with any buddies, or did you go individually?
Well, it was about 30 of us that went that day, but it was all northern Colorado.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have anybody that I knew
Okay.
personally, you know, that went with us.
Okay.
And then I was sent to Louisville, Kentucky, Fort Knox. And that's where I took 16 or 17 weeks of basic training for tanks and heavy equipment.
Now, is that something an area you chose to get into, or
No,
you
I was just, they
okay.
just, you know, they interviewed you about different things. And I didn't have a job. I really didn't know what I wanted. 18 years old, what the hell do I know about a war?
Yeah.
You know. And so we took our training there. I can already remember how hot it was and how humid. And our last hike was 25-mile full field pack and guns. And in Louisville, Kentucky, humidity 98, and and the temperature 90. We made it. Then after that, they transferred me to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, for more training. And I remember we was there, and it was in November, so I think it was. Anyway, so they're going to give us field maneuvers. So they packed us up, and we went out onto these hills. And we got our pup tents set up, and got ready. We had an evening meal, and come a god-awful snowstorm you ever saw.
Huh.
Half of the tents collapsed, and those that didn't collapse got run over by a herd of cows, because there was a bunch of cows down the valley, and they got disoriented in the storm. They ran over the whole camp, so we had to discontinue maneuvers. So then we were stationed there, and I forget the name of the town, Little Rock, I think it was, Little Rock, Arkansas. But we had strict orders there that only certain parts of town we could go into. Off limit. I don't know why it was off limits. I suppose it was a racial thing at that time.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And then we were supposed to go to Salina, Kansas. We transferred from there. But the day that we left Camp Chaffee, they'd loaded up the tanks on the flat cars, and we were all organized out in the street in front of the orderly room. And we had a prisoner. Now, I don't know what he had done. It was one of our military guys. But he was under armed guard in the orderly room. Of course, we had to take him with us because he's attached to our outfit.
So at this point, you were already put into an outfit?
Right.
Okay.
So he had to go to Salina with us to stand military trial. And so we were standing there, and pretty soon heard 3 or 4 gunshots. Well, I don't know if he attacked one of the guards or if he tried to escape, but they killed him.
Hmm.
So that was quite a send-off to go to Salina, Kansas. All new to us greenhorns.
Sure.
And then we went on up to Salina. And when we got there, the mud was about that deep, And then in a few months, the dust was about that deep. But we were right off a base, off of Smoky Hill Air Base. And we took training there. And then one day they said, well, polish up your tanks. We're going on a bond drive. Can you believe that? So they cleaned up the tanks, and they took us through Salina, Kansas on a bond drive so we could keep the war going, we could make more money. And then we went on. We went to a New York base by, I forget where it was, somewhere back east. And that was our jumping off place.
Now, how was it up to this point? How was your transition from civilian life into military life? Was that?
Well, that was a 360-degree turnaround.
Yeah.
You're used to being told what to do by your parents, but there's a little difference in mom saying it and the top sergeant saying it. You learn right away the voice is different. And it's you got accustomed to things. And they hollered roll out in your shorts and stand inspection at 4 in the morning. That's what you did.
Yeah. How was it? I imagine, like a lot of people at your age at that time, hadn't probably been too far away from home. What was it like being probably away from home for the first time? Was that?
Oh man, you got homesick.
Yeah.
Oh, just sick. Because you didn't know the guy next to you. He didn't know you. And farther than worse, besides that, he didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
Everybody on your own.
Yeah.
And of course the food was different. The clothing was different. And the inspection every day, some kind of a damn inspection to get you used to knowing that they were the boss and you would do as you're told. And that's what everything was about. Follow orders.
Yeah.
It all boiled down to following orders.
Had you gotten a chance to come home before you left for overseas? Any sort of leaves of any
When
kind?
we got to, no, we didn't get leave. When we got to Salina, Kansas, and they told us we was going overseas, they said we're going to give you a 3.5-day pass. Now, I never did know what a 3.5-day pass was. But anyway, there's a couple of guys I buddied up with, and I got the notion, let's go to Greeley. We was only supposed to go 50 or 60 miles from base. So we checked it out. We knew that a train left Kansas and come to Greeley. So we got tickets and we came to Greeley, the three of us, and we stayed in my folks' house. Second day I was here, we was down in the older part of Greeley and talking to some of the buddies, and the MPs come up. Let's see your pass. You're not supposed to be here. We're going to take you back. And we talked and we said, hey, give us a break. We're going back tomorrow. We're going to catch the train. We're going back tomorrow. So he said, okay. When we got down at the train station to get on, they were there, making sure we got on that train.
I'll be darned. So you're back east. You're getting ready to depart then for Europe.
Yes, and then we stayed there. I think it might have been Fort Meade. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, a bunch of us decided we should see New York.
Oh, geez.
So we took the main subway and went down to see New York, and they just finished the Statler Hotel. So I walked in and wanted to know if we could get a room to stay all night. And they said, well, I didn't have it. They give the four of us a room for the night. The next day we went back to the Statler, then we went back to camp. Then we caught the train and we went to the docks. And we went on, we were assigned to an older ship. It was the SS Mariposa. And that ship had transported World War I veterans. You could see their initials carved in the handrail around the ship.
Is that right?
It was something else, you know. Well, we were ballast because they didn't have any ballast. They want all the people that there for ballast. We were about 6 to 8 feet sleeping below waterline, which we didn't like. That's torpedo area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And of course, the smell down there wasn't too great because there wasn't too much any ventilation. But the latrine was something different. They had at the front of the boat was a trough. Now this trough ran all the way down the ship and out the back. They had stools set up over this trough, the water ran through. That was your latrine, which is okay, you know, it worked fine. But you had to be very careful the guy upstream from you. There's always some joker that would wad up a bunch of toilet paper instead of the fire and float it under you. You know, and it was just stuff like that all the time. You had to do something or you'd go nuts.
Yeah. Well, I always like to ask this question because I've always heard all sorts of stories about these crossings. Particularly, here's a boy from landlocked Colorado. What was that crossing like for you? Did you get your sea legs? How'd that work out for you?
Well, the Atlantic isn't known for being smooth, you know, and we didn't get to go over in a convoy. We went off over by ourselves. We had no protection. And I'll always remember there was 17,000 of us on that ship. The population of Greeley that day was 17,000.
Wow.
And so after about 3 days, they let us take our bedroll and go up on deck and sleep where it was fresh. As long as I get fresh air, I didn't get too seasick. But boy, I mean, tell you, you're down that hole, and our main meal was a limey ship, and they were feeding us mutton twice a day. And it wasn't too good of mutton, you know, but you ate. And the ship was moving, and of course our ship had to change course over so many minutes to get back and forth across there.
Did it play into your mind that here you guys are alone? The chances of a U-boat being out there, did that play into you at all?
Oh yes, you know, we talked about that a lot because that's why we wanted to get on deck, because we were 8 feet below waterline.
Right, yeah.
That's where the torpedoes could come. And of course they just hung bunks down there, and 90% of the time we'd have scared to death. because one ship can't look over the whole ocean. We did have escort for a few, I'd say 100 miles or so with the airplanes. But the old airplanes couldn't go but 100 miles, so they had to go back and get fuel again. So we went over by ourselves, and it took us 9 days before we got there.
And where did you guys land then?
It's right there in Scotland, wasn't it?
Okay.
And then we took a train and come down to southern England. And we stayed there a week. And then they briefed us, getting their stuff ready to, whatever they had to do to get us on a boat. Well, we thought, then one day they said, okay, we're going across the channel. So we're going down with the boat. Well, we thought we were going to the boat would dock, Well, the boat didn't dock, So we got there and they said, okay, everybody goes over the side on a rope ladder. They went over the side and rope ladder, and they had these landing barges. And of course, the big ship didn't move like the landing barge. So you had to be careful that you didn't get your leg or your foot between the landing barge and the big ship. They set you into this landing barge. And they said, okay, we're going to cross the channel now. And they wheeled, and away we went. Well, there was a couple of German planes circling real high. And they said they're probably going to try to strafe or drop a bomb. But so when you get there, the front end of the boat will drop, you guys hit the shore. Well, the driver, he got scared because they dropped a bomb, and he stopped too far from shore.
Can you give us a rough time period when this was, when you weren't crossing for the D-Day landing, were you?
No, this is after.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's about a month or so after.
Okay, okay.
But he stopped short. We went off the front. Well, Christ, he went clear down and over our head in water. Just like drowned rats, We finally got up on the shore. They'd laid a steel mash, but he missed it. And then they got us in a line up Omaha, I think it was Omaha. And they said to walk up that, and there was a little path. And they said, if we blow the whistle, get off the path, scatter. So we got part way up, and the whistle blew, and then we come in the strafe, Well, I don't know if anybody got hurt, but we made it up there, and then we went in. I can't remember how we got there, what we did. We walked quite a ways before we got to a repo depot where we used to concentrate and get organized through the hedgerows. And we stayed there. I think it took us a week to move on up. And so I remember every night that they'd say, well, here comes Night Tech Chuck Charlie in an airplane, German plane fly over. And they said, now buddy up to the foxhole, because they said they'll sneak in sometimes and slit a guy's throat. What they do and just demoralize, But then we went on, and then I got attached to the 773rd. They'd lost some of their help, or whatever you want to call it. So then I went in, as a driver for the Tank Destroyer.
What were, backing up a little bit, what was the site there as you landed on Omaha and hiked in? Had they kind of cleaned up the beach, or was there still?
The beach, the water across there is just full of ships that had been hit.
Must
They're
have
just
been a
laying
site.
there. Now, as far as the bodies, they were gone.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
But as we, it was just a complete mess out there.
Still, yeah.
I don't know how they ever cleaned it up. I don't know what they did with it.
Wow.
I suppose they cut it up for salvage or something after the war, but it was a complete disaster.
So you linked up, or assigned the 773.
The 773rd, yeah, we went there. I went in there for a while, just a replacement. I just tagged along with them until they had I don't know, opening, or somebody got wounded or something. And I went in as a driver.
I heard it was always kind of tough to come in as a replacement, that the regulars, until you kind of got in.
I come in, my outfit that I went in, 773rd, was an outfit mostly from the South. Those guys had all volunteered for a year of service, and then they were to get out. They'd served their time. Well, about the time they wanted to get out, the war come, they didn't get out. It went right, you know. And so they called me little boy, because I was the youngest kitten of the litter. And of course I called them old men at that time because I was 18, they was 33 and 34.
Huh.
But I could just read their mind, you know, almost when they saw me coming, it's bad enough to fight a war, now I got to take care of a kid,
Yeah.
you know. But they just harbored me, they just took me in. You know,
Oh, good.
you know, they did real good. And they just really took good care of me.
Before we move on with your story, can you describe to us what it's like inside a tank?
Okay, now the tank, the driver is down here and the assistant driver is over here. And then there's a turret, probably 6-8 feet across. And up there you have your main gun, ours is a 90 millimeter. And then we had a 50 caliber machine gun that was on a turret to go on. There was 5 of us in the Tank Destroyer. Now a Tank Destroyer was different than a tank. The Tank Destroyer top was open.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't enclosed, it was open. So therefore, like when the streets in the towns were real narrow. So that was one thing we had to be real careful of. As we went down the street, somebody didn't throw a hand grenade in our turret. So we confiscated another machine gun. We had one on each side, and so we went down, we saw any movement in the houses, we discouraged that.
Yeah.
And the assistant driver, I really never did know why we had one, but he was supposed to be the radio operator. We had all the radios and the intercoms, which worked sometimes. And then we had a tank commander, and we had a gunner and the loader. And most of the time around the inside of the turret of the tank, there was brackets. Each bracket held 3 to 4 rounds of ammunition, which was, you know, about like that. And the ammunition was armor piercing, high explosives, and something else that was like if it hit a leaf or a twig, it'd explode. Very sensitive.
Okay.
And so then underneath the floor were what they call wells, and there was more ammunition we stored under there, plus some of our food. Our bedrolls we hung on the outside of the tank because we didn't have enough room inside.
But it sounds like was it cramped in there? Or, I mean,
So the gunner had a little handle, and when he turned the switch on, turned it, the whole turret would go and the tank would go. I mean not the tank,
yeah.
the turret. It was electronic, it'd go right around. And then he could turn the other handle, and that'd give you the elevation of the gun. And then the other was a trigger, electronic trigger. And they had a little platform behind, and that's when where the gunner would stand, or the loader. He'd take the ammunition, as the breech opened, he would take it and shove it in with your hand, not this way. If it went this way, cut your fingers off. But up this way, I would throw your arm up. Okay, he would fire, it would recoil, and the shell, and you threw it overboard. Now with that 90 millimeter, the recoil would just lift the front end of that tank right up. You know,
wow.
And you didn't dare stand behind that recoil, or it'd really get you.
What about the noise factor being?
Oh, well, of course, most of the noise was out front,
Okay.
from the barrel of the gun. But we still had it here, you know. And, and of course, we were called upon to, where they needed help, we just went.
Okay. Well, start walking us through then your path through Europe from that point once you joined up.
Well, first then we didn't get to go through Paris. We bypassed Paris and went on around. And then we had at that time really had the Germans on the run, you know. And we got to the Maginot Line. That was a fortified line between France and England. And they come up with a bulldozer. And they were going to dig your tanks in so that the front end of the tank would be elevated like that. There were so many, I think we fired twice an hour. Indirect fire twice an hour for 4 days. And we said, what the hell are we doing here? And then it dawned on us, it was the time of the third election of President Roosevelt. And so we just stopped it. They said we run out of fuel and ammunition, but we didn't run out of fuel and ammunition. Of course, most of the guys later, the talk later on, the rumors is after the war, if we had gone on, there wouldn't have been a Battle of the Bulge.
Oh, is that right?
They wouldn't have had time to regroup. But it was all held up there for a week. Then we went on and we come to a little town in Germany. It wasn't a little town, big, and they called it the Pittsburgh of Germany. They made a steel factory. And between the road and the town was a river, and of course they had a bridge. Well, we had to attack that and clear it out. The infantry and a few of the tank destroyers. I mean, they just slaughtered us. They just wiped out the infantry.
Mm.
We got in as far as the town square, and we thought those were all office buildings, but half of them were pillboxes. You know, guns. So we got stymied. Just wiped out the infantry, just slaughtered them. And so we had to back off. And so the orders were, we got to take the town. We got some infantry trapped up a couple of blocks. But they said we're going to get help. And I'm like, we could use the help, all right. So they brought in our company of laid smokescreen, had these big machines.
Mm-hmm.
Next morning, they said everything's right, start up the smoke machines. And they laid the smoke out, we got the tanks going, started up, and here come the mortar and the artillery. The guys running the smoke screens ran. They left us. Just quit. I gotta get a drink. After they had run and left us, they were a colored battalion, we seen them running towards the river. They said, we gotta go in and get out what's back there. Gotta get them out. So we advanced, we got into town square, and we cleared out a few of the pillboxes, and we come to a standstill. And the lieutenant came up and said, we need somebody to take a tank and go down so we can get those guys out down there by the other street. And I said, well, I can go if I can get somebody to go with me. I need one to take supplies and get them out. He said, okay, it was a cobblestone street. He said, you go up here a block, and then you turn and go about 3 blocks south. And you got to go like it. Well, that's what we did. And when I got down there, I had to crawl out of the seat to get back in the turret. And I seen the guy sitting there holding this round of ammunition. I said, what are you doing? He said, you took that corner so fast that high explosive shell fell out of the rack.
Oh, jeez.
He said, I caught it. And I said, well, thank you. I thought you got hit by a sniper.
Yeah.
Anyway, I stood up, and as I looked out that way, I heard the noise go, and I knew it was a big artillery shell. And that's the first time I ever saw an artillery shell. It was about that long, about that big around, and it was coming in, you know. And then it hit 3 houses over. Well, I didn't know you could see them.
Yeah.
But it was on the downside. So anyway, we got the guys in, and I don't remember how we got out of there. We did. And when we got back, they said, we got to get out of here. So they'd made up what do I want to call it? Some way to cross the river. Not a pontoon, but something that floated.
Mm-hmm.
So they take one tank at a time across the river. Of course, I was the last tank to go. And that made me feel good.
Yeah.
And so we finally got across, and he said, now we're going to fuel up, and then we're going into another sector. But we're going to drive at night. You know, and you don't use lights. And so he said, the Jeep will lead you out. And I was following the Jeep, and it was in the middle of the night. And the Jeep was about 20 feet ahead of me. And all of a sudden that damn Jeep just jumped, and my commander flew out of the Jeep. He hit a shell hole, and he came right back under my tank. I grabbed the levers, locked it down, hit the brakes, shut it off, and I didn't even want to look. I didn't even want to look. And finally they said, well, let's see, and he was okay, but my track had just pressed his head just down into mud.
Is that right? Oh boy.
He was one scared. I was scareder than he was, you know. But it's funny how things happen. He just bounced out of there like a rubber ball.
Jeez.
And then we went on to up to a small town. I forget. It was getting close to the Battle of the Bulge then. It was started, and so in the little town, we was going up a hill in the town, and they told us to stop. We'd have about an hour delay. So we stopped there. We had a big old blowtorch we'd found. We set it up outside, making coffee, and the order said, well, we got to move up another few hundred feet. So I told the assistant driver, I said, do you want to drive up? I don't want to ruin my coffee pot and the coffee for us guys. I'll carry that. So he started up, and about that time mortar came in. Took my coffee pot. Took a couple of GIs behind me. And I thought I got hit by a rock, you know, in the ankle, in the leg. And I started walking towards the tank, and I thought, well, that's funny, I don't remember stepping in all that water and all that stuff. And what it was, my shoe was filling up.
Blood.
So they took me over, and sure, I got a shrapnel on the leg. And I stayed there that night, and then that night they took me back to a hospital, Army tent hospital, one of the new hospitals. And they fixed me up there, and I stayed till about 4 in the morning. They said, we got you stitched up, you want to stay, or it's up to you. But he said, there's another little piece in there of shrapnel, but he said, I don't think we want to dig it out. I said, okay. He said, if you want to go back to your outfit, we'll take you back. I said, I seeing all those guys laying there, I thought I'd sooner go back that way. So they took me back and passed me up, and of course then we went on into the heavy fighting of the battle, but we got there. And they called us all up, what was left of us, and they said, now we're going into Battle of the Bulge. And they said, it's not going to be fun. And he said, let me tell you, if you got any souvenirs, get rid of them. Because he said, they're not taking any prisoners. If you lose your tank and you're still alive, you'll be a foot soldier with no replacements. You always like good news like that.
Yeah, jeez.
So we didn't quite get there, but we got to another place, and there was, we had to take an area. There was a battalion of infantry on the right, one in the middle, one on the left, and we had to clear the area. We were all supposed to jump off at the same time. So we had a TD assigned to each company. So our commander said, I want the middle attachment to go first, where we can flush them out. Well, we went in first, and all hell broke loose. I mean, all hell just broke loose. We got in, couldn't even use our guns, couldn't even use the big guns, too many trees, couldn't do anything, couldn't see them. And they just slaughtered the infantry again. And our tank commander said, we got to get out of here. And we said, how in the hell are we going to get out of here? He said, the only thing we can do is drop the escape hatch in the bottom of the tank, and we'll go out through there and get your guns. It'll be hand-to-hand combat from here on out. So we dropped the escape hatch. Well, that's all right, but the tank only sits that high off the ground. And the track is sunk that far in the mud. So you had about that much room. Well, my weapon was a Thompson submachine gun, because I had to have something I could lay behind the dash. So we went out through the escape hatch, and we got back to the back of the tank where we could get some protection. And about that time, the other right and left flank saw the predicament we was in, so they moved up. Well, that discouraged the Germans. They started backing off. And right out in front of a tank out there was 2 wounded GIs. And they both a hollering and raising hell, you know. And one of them quit, and up come a medic, and he said, I got to go out and treat that guy. And the tank commander said, don't go out there. Don't go out there. He said, I got to, he was like in a trance. I got to go. I got to go. And he said, don't go. Well, he went. Hell, he didn't make it 15 feet, you know. They killed him.
And wasn't that part of the or the agreement? Maybe you didn't shoot medics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They had the big helmet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You don't mess with them.
Yeah. But they still did.
Oh, they just riddled him, you know.
Uh,
And so then, when the flanks moved up, they said, "Well, we'll back out of this mess and get back onto the road." Well, we had a hell of a time backing out of there. We made it, and we put the escape hatch back in, and then we went on to another sector. I forget where it was. I get kind of mixed up. But anyway, then we got started to snow, and they said, well, give us a little piece of map. Now you go, our commander said, you go up here and you will rendezvous in a certain area. It was snowing a little bit, and it was dark. So we finally got to a place, and he said, hold it. I said, I think I see some of our tanks. I said, well, wait. He said, I'll check it out. So he went down, and he come back, and he said, be real quiet, just get the hell out of here. He said, those aren't our tanks. Those are German tanks. So we backed up and went back up on a little ridge and waited till daylight so they could take care of that little matter. But it was just one deal, just like that right after. And then we got into the Battle of the Bulge, really heavy, snow and cold.
yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because that was, what I understand, one of the coldest winters in European history. What were conditions like for you? Were you dressed warm enough?
Well, you never warm enough.
Yeah.
Because the tanks didn't have any heat.
Mm.
There's no heat in them. They get just as cold as the outside.
Almost like sitting in that metal, almost sitting in a refrigerator.
Yeah, worse than that, because it didn't warm up.
Yeah.
And the snow was about so deep, you know, it was just cold. And of course, all your rations froze. And nothing better than eating a can of corned beef hash. It's froze, you know, but you ate it. And the final drive of the tank had 30, 40 gallon of oil, and that's where we'd try to lay some of our rations there. That would keep it from freezing so hard. Or we'd put some under our shirt, you know. I always kept an extra pair of socks next to my stomach. Keep my feet from freezing. When I could, I'd change, put on a warm pair of socks.
Oh boy.
And but it was just, you know, just miserable. You just can't imagine what it's like never to be warm.
How does a person function like that? I mean, for that long period of time. I mean, the physical conditions of the cold. You're probably not sleeping properly. Doesn't sound like you're eating properly. Then you've got the stress of war on top of that. How did you function? How did you keep going?
Well, we just, you know, you talk to one another. You know, in the tank, and you tried not to get in a real depressed situation. Somebody would say something, and might be a little laugh. And of course, the bad part was when we were all holed up in the tank, you had to go to the bathroom. Tanks didn't have bathrooms.
Wow.
So you bailed out, you know, and it was dang fast, and you got back in.
Wow.
And we was sitting there by the edge of the trees one time. One of the guys said, the motors were behind us, and they had vents. And one of the guys said, I'm going to take my sleeping bag, and I am going to sleep on top of the motor where it's warm. He got back there and laid down, and there was a shell head over there and a piece of shrapnel over there, right down his sleeping bag. He said, I think I'll come inside now. But you know, you just got the point where you're just numb, absolutely numb.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we had such a turnover in the tanks, you know, in my outfit. all of the crew I started with were all gone. I was the only one left of it. We had replacements. But you know, you just survived. I don't think anybody can understand what it's like to be at 20 below zero and you can't feel anything and you can't really see anything. Because I looked through a periscope a lot of the time. It would frost over, fog over, you know, and you're just guessing by golly.
Huh. I can't comprehend it. I can't truly understand it. I can't imagine what it was like.
It was, and of course the metal was just as cold, you know. And then we went on to a different place. We moved on, and I can't remember where that was at. Anyway, we come to a little village, and my tank commander got hit in the neck with some shrapnel. The loader had got sick or something, and my assistant driver was sick. They bailed out and they took him back for some treatment.
Were you still healing up as well at this time?
Yeah. And so all that was left was the gunner and myself. So I pulled up alongside the little building, and I said, we were just going to have to sit here and see what was going on. Well, right out in front this way was a long shed, real long, I don't know, 100 or so feet. It wasn't very big. I think it was they must have raised sheep, netted for sheep. Well, the infantry started to advance, and they got trapped out in that open field, so they ran into that shed. Well, the machine gun's still going. Pretty soon I heard a loud explosion, and I knew that was a German 88.
Oh, jeez.
Shooting at him in the shed. And I couldn't, finally about a block and a half away, him and I spotted the gun barrel of that tank. He was hiding behind a house, and he was shooting at him over here. Well, we knew we couldn't drive out that way because he'd broadside us. So we hit, the gunner and I decided, he said, can you load? And I said, I haven't loaded since then, you know. I said, but I'll try. You tell me what you want. And he said, okay, I want these armor piercing. Now I said, stay out of the recoil of that 90 millimeter. He said, you slam it in, you tap me on the shoulder, that tells me you're out of the way. And he said, I'm going to shoot through the house and see if I can get that tank. So I threw one in, he shot. And they rejected, I threw the station out, I put another one in, he shot. I put another one in. As I did, my foot slipped this way.
Oh, geez.
I hit him on the back, he fired.
Oh, no.
I got the recoil on the back.
Oh, boy.
Just knocked me clear over into it. I couldn't even think or see. I heard him hollering. He said, hey, I think we got him some smoke coming up. Well, I think what we did, I think we hit him. We shot through the house, we hit him. But I think he fired up the tank and he backed off. And then he looked at me and he thought I had got hit by a sniper. But I kind of got where I could move a little bit. And the next morning, we stayed there that night, and the next morning, a captain come up and said, I want you to go with me. I want to go up and look, see where that tank was. God, I couldn't hardly walk, but the snow was still about that deep. But I always remembered the little path, and I was walking up there, and there were just stacks of frozen soldiers' bodies stacked out there. We went up there and looked around. While we was there, here come a Jeep with a star on it. It was a one-star general. And he was checking. Of course, he didn't invite me into the conversation, but him and the captain talked it over. And then that afternoon, then I got some replacements, and we advanced on down the road. It was a wooded area, and that's the kind I didn't like because there was open areas and the wood you couldn't see. So we had about a 3/4 mile stretch where there was no protection. But we made it through there, and okay. And then a few days later, we had another map, and we were going on I don't know where. Mm-hmm. But we got up to a crossroad, and the lieutenant come back and he said, we can't go any farther. I said, the MP's stopping us. Said the other armed part of the Army has priority. So that didn't bother me any. We pulled over and stopped alongside the road. We hadn't been stopped there very long, and heard somebody holler, "Hey, what outfit you from?" Of course, you heard that all the time.
Yeah.
What outfit you in? Where are you from?
Yeah.
And he said, and then I heard the next comment. He said, because I was laying out in front of the tank in the sun. And he said, "Well, why are you here if you're going there?" He said, "Well, the man up there says we can't go through." He said, "Oh." And then I glanced over and I seen who it was. It was General George.
Patton?
General George.
Is that right?
He said, "You're going through." He walked up there and talked to that lieutenant, and he told him, "Crank him up, move him out."
Wow.
And that got my attention when he said General George. So we went on through there, and then the next day we were to cross, I don't know what river it was, but there was a whole lot of convoy of military behind me. I was kind of in the middle. And somehow I got stopped. I don't know what, I had to wait for something. But anyway, the road went up, and I got up there and hell just quit. And I couldn't see a road, and there's a couple of houses here, it looked like an alley, but I saw a road going that way. And the tank commander said, "Take that one." So that's a road. So we went up there and got up top of the hill, about a mile. The road quit. And then we could see back down. Well, we took the wrong turn. Here, all this convoy stuff was behind me. We had to turn all around, go back down between them two houses, and then we got down to the river. And while we were waiting there was a house on a hill up there, a little house, and I heard some of the officers, somebody talking, said, "I think they're directing artillery fire from that house." And we looked, and usually in time of war, women aren't standing out hanging sheets on a line. So they went up there, and sure enough, that's what they were doing.
Is that right?
Some way with the way they hung the clothes on the line. Well, anyway, we got down there, and we're going to cross the river on this pontoon bridge. And of course, the rails are only that high on each side, just a little bitty thing. The guy said, "Now, you get on the pontoon, you put it in second gear, and you don't stop for anything. You keep right on the go." All along the bank, they put up anti-aircraft. Well, we got about halfway, and I happened to look up, and I seen two German planes up there circling. Well, they didn't hit the bridge, but they hit the water. And that wall of water come down, and it just tipped that pontoon like that, you know.
Mm.
And my tracks went up on them rails.
No.
The guys in back were ready to jump, but I couldn't get out. But we made it across, and I thought, man, there's got to be a better way to make a living than this. Just rock.
Oh.
But we made that, and then from there on it kind of got downhill. And then we went through a bunch of woods, and they had some infantry riding along with us, and we could hear something, and even above the noise of the tank, and we stopped, and we could smell it. And so we went on, and we come upon a satellite concentration camp.
Oh, is that right?
And so they had about 200 people in this camp. Of course, they had their guard towers set up and their fence. And so we pulled up there, and I don't know whether we cut the fence or one of the tanks pulled the gate open or what. But man, those people were just skin and bone, just filthy, dirty, nothing to eat, you know. But the Germans across the road, about a half a block, had built a smokehouse to smoke meats and cure meats. And you can imagine when the wind blew right, what that aroma done to those people in their concentration camp. So that people said, "Can we go over there and have at it?" We didn't understand what they were talking, but we knew they was hungry. But I walked over there, and I always remember one little lady walked over there, and she got a hold of a piece of German sausage, or whatever it was, some kind of meat. It was wrapped. And some lady was trying to take it away from her. She was swinging that thing like a Tommy Hawk and eating on it. But they were just starved to death.
Well, now, were you aware that there were concentration camps, or was this something entirely new to you?
It was off in the woods.
Oh, jeez.
This little solitary concentration camp. And I don't know what happened to guards. I guess they ran. I don't know what happened. I didn't even want to know.
Yeah. Oh,
And,
man.
but boy, and then we called back, and so I'm sure they sent up some trucks to take them back to feed them and bathe them and take them through medical stuff. And we went on then, and then we came to another place, and it was an open field. And they said there's a bunch of German infantry dug in across that field. They might have bazookas or stuff to knock out your tank. So go like heck. So we went like hell across there. We come up this little house. There's 4 or 5 houses. And we stopped. We run them out. And God, I was tired. Gee, I was so tired. And so I drove up alongside the house. I got out of the driver's seat and I went in the house. There's a little, right beside the tank in the house was a little day bed. So I said, I'm going to take a nap. And I went sound asleep. And I woke up the next morning and they had all these burns on me. Look, not burns, but marks, hot marks. And I said, what the hell is going on? He said, we had a counterattack. And he said, do you think we could wake you up?
Holy cow.
I said, I didn't even hear it. But I had the marks from a 50 caliber machine gun with the empty casings in it, you know. I didn't hear a thing. He said, well, we survived it anyway. And he said, at least you got some rest.
Man.
He said, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of this place. And I said, okay, I'll crank it up and we'll move out. Well, I said, we can't go out. He said, yes, we got to go. I said, all those dead German soldiers laying there, and they're laying right across the road. He said, you got to go. So I backed it up and headed it out that way. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to, drive over, but didn't have any choice. So I took he had levers like that to turn your tank. So I just turned loose the levers and kind of looked up the sky and drove on out.
Hmm.
But it gives you a weird feeling.
Oh, man.
Weird feeling, And then, of course, then we went on down, and then we went in through, that's where the tank fell through the bridge. And
So this is getting towards the end of the war then.
Yeah.
Were you guys aware? Was it a general feeling, okay?
Well, we knew they were on the run, they were moving. And before we got to that point, we come to another little town, and we come in, and here come a German officer with a white flag. And I think he had a couple of hundred of his troops with him. They surrendered. They walked up, laid all their guns down, and went on. And we sat there and talked. He could speak very good English. He had been to West Point to train. He was an older man. And he said, well, the war's over for you guys. But he said, it's just starting. He said, you don't know it, but it's starting. He said, in 4 or 5 years, you're going to have to fight the Russians. You don't know that, but it's going to happen.
Wow.
He said, it's all been planned. Don't tell me, I don't want to know that, And so, as it went in history repeats, it did happen. But then we went on to our rendezvous, and we come back. And then we come back, and we went to a town, and we turned in of course, I didn't have a tank to turn in. And I was there, the war was over, and I was at this area. And Sergeant Comore said he want you, name 5 or 6 of us, to report to the orderly room. So I went down to the orderly room. And he said, well, now, he said, I got good news and bad news. He didn't say it that way, but he said, the war's over. But he said, a bunch of you guys we're going to take you over to the motor pool. You're getting new tanks, new equipment. You're getting all new shots. You're getting clothing. You're going to the Pacific. You're on your way. And I said, this can't be happening. It just, And then a few days later, the Japs give up. So we got out of that. But then we went to another area, and it was a staging area where they had a lot of the SS troops concentrated, and they were taking some of them down as witnesses to the Nuremberg trials. So we guarded them for a while, for a few weeks. And then we got the news, we got out on a point system. So they said, okay, you're going home. So,
You had enough points to come home?
yeah. So they got us all organized, and we headed down and out through Le Havre and come on home through the storm in the Pacific, and it was terrible. That was on the SS Mariposa. It was 8,000 of us, and that storm was so bad. We wasn't supposed to be outside, but you could go out on the back of the ship and look down.
Now, you said the Mariposa, isn't that what you came over on?
No, we went over on the Aquitania.
Oh, okay.
And come back on the Mariposa.
Okay.
But you could look way down there, and the screw was coming out of the water. And the priest you look in and way up here. So everybody got sick, you know. It took us 10 days to make that trip. But there's a lot of funny little experiences, you know. And then we got back into Virginia, and then they put us on a troop train, and we got stalled in Omaha because of snow and stayed there. Then we come on to Denver, and from there, I called my folks. My mother had a cousin that lived in Denver, so after discharge, I went over there. But I always remember my discharge at Fort Logan. I went in, of course, they was talking to you, giving you your money, and there was a very well-dressed young man there, had on a sports suit and gold watch and tie and all that. And he was signing up my papers, and he said, well, I see you got a Purple Heart and you're wounded. I said, yeah. He said, well, you got 2 hands, 2 feet, and 2 eyes. We ain't giving you no money. Next.
Huh.
Nobody asked for any money.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's just his damn attitude.
Right. Yeah.
You know. I didn't expect to get a disability pay, but it pretty short and sweet he was. He wasn't sweet, but he was short.
Huh. Wow. And then you came on home?
Yeah, and then my folks picked me up and brought me home.
How was that reunion? Do you remember that day?
Well, yes, I remember that. My folks, of course, they was there, and of course my brother hadn't got discharged yet. He was still over in Germany. And I'd got enough points. He was in the service longer, but I ended up with more points than he did. And so I got home, and so it was still a good feeling, but still yet a bad feeling because he wasn't out. He wasn't home yet. And so we stayed there a couple hours, and then we come on back to Greeley. And then, of course, everything once you get home looks familiar, like you hadn't even left, you know, except everybody had aged a little, quite a little. And
how long altogether were you away from home, roughly?
about 2.5 years. Yeah. I got that 1 3-day pass out of it.
Jeez. Let me ask you, with you overseas, or over in Europe, your brother over in Europe, did your folks, particularly your mom, ever talk about what she was after the war, what she was thinking, what she was going through
she said,
with her sons over there in harm's way?
Of course, she got after us, because we didn't write very often.
Well, that was another question I'd like to ask too after you discuss
this. We had
this.
that little female thing at that time. But when we got home, she said, I didn't want a long letter. A few words. Of course, we was too dumb to go along with that. We'd go 2 or 3 weeks, we didn't write, because we had a hell of a problem with the mail. And of course, being the bastard battalion, we never had a central place.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then when it was in November and December, long in there, we got tangled up in that battle of the bulge stuff. We never even got paid. We didn't know where we was at. Which didn't make any difference. We weren't going anywhere.
Yeah, couldn't spend it anywhere.
And so it was quite a stress to her because my brother had been wounded twice. And
was she aware of your wound?
When she read about it, I didn't tell her about the wound. I didn't write about it. I didn't write about that. But I wonder, after we were wounded there and I got well, we was in another attack, and we had a layover for about 2 or 3 hours, and then a commanding officer came up and said, you're going with these 2 officers. where are we going? He said, just get on your best clothes and go. I said, my best clothes. So I went with him, and I got in the Jeep, and we went about 10 or 15 miles back behind the lines. And I don't know where it was at, but anyway, they'd built a little reviewing stand across this field. And I said to these two officers, what the hell's going on? Is this a court martial or something? No. I forget who the dignitary was. I didn't know. He said, now here's the plan. We're walking you across to the reviewing stand. This person is going to say whatever he's going to say. He's going to pin the purple heart medal ribbon on you. We're going to turn around, you're going to salute, and we're going to walk back across the field. They went over there, and he said, if you were, whoever he was, pinned the medal on me. And I walked back across the field, got in the Jeep, went back up to my tank.
Huh.
But I wish I could remember who that was.
Is that right? Huh.
I wish I could remember what it probably was some congressman. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Huh.
But it was real hard feelings about Patton, you know, in the service. A lot of the guys didn't like him.
What was your opinion of him?
Well, I really didn't know him. The only thing we got was feedback through
Okay.
officers, and of course we, as enlisted, we didn't get the feedback that the officers got. So the theory was his blood in our guts, we'd win the war, which was true. And I do think that we'd never got into Battle of the Bulge if we kept going, but I can't prove that. You know, that's just hearsay stuff. And I don't know about it. I think there was a lot of good officers, and there was, just like the officers had us advance into them trees. Well, they relieved him of his command, of that particular command, because he didn't do as, he lost hundreds of infantrymen. But they probably just transferred him to some other command because they wasn't going to make a big issue out of it in front of us guys.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
demoralize things.
Right.
And, but it was quite a deal, you know.
What's it like, for particularly people like myself, never even come anywhere close to being in battle? What's it like to be in battle, to have an artillery barrage on you? How do you prepare for it when you know you're going into battle? How do you prepare yourself for that? What's it like in battle? And then once you're out of battle, how do you decompress from that?
Well, you see, when you get ready to go, they say we're going to advance. That's the worst stage for me. We're going to advance. We're sitting there, and you're just scared shitless.
Yeah.
You know, because they can see you, you can't see them, and they zeroed in on every landmark for artillery. They know right how far to shoot and where you're at. And so that the worst part for me was the sitting there. And you know, you're just petrified. So when they got the order to move, then you put your tank in gear and you started up. Then things begin to change. You had to concentrate on where you're going, how you're going, and still listen to what your tank commander's trying to tell you. And the damn headsets we had didn't work half the time. So he tried to tap you on the shoulder, go left, or tap you on the shoulder, go right, or in the center to stop, you know. And so then you'd be driving along, and if you had small arm fire, it'd take out your periscope. So you'd have to pull it down, put in another head. And that would just scare the shit. I was just sitting there and everything go blank, you know.
Wow.
And you could hear the shells hitting the outside of the tank.
And you had, and your tank was a thin armored
Thinner
tank.
than the tank
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
than a regular tank, because it had two twin diesel engines in it, so it's supposed to be faster, maneuver more. But and then the cold with it, and the guys getting hit inside the tank, and you get new men. I don't care how they trained you, it never came out that way in battle.
Yeah.
It never wasn't that way. And of course they didn't know what to do, and they were scared. And I was 18 years old, and I was so scared I couldn't even think. And I often thought, here I wasn't even 21 years old, and I spent almost 3 years in the service, and I was out of it. And then, of course, after, like you say, after the battle, then it was time to check weapons, and see who was, walk around the different tanks, see who was still there, who was gone. One of the other tank commanders got hit by a rifle bullet and killed him. And so it was just a mess. And we got, at one time we got to the far edge of a little town. We were outpost. And of course the first thing we did when we got in the house was try to secure it, see if there's anything in it. Because if we found the house, that meant we could sleep in it at night instead of the tank, but we still had to guard the tank. So I went in the house and the rest of them come in, and I went through the front, and I seen a stairway going down to look like a little root cellar. So I started down there, and I got halfway down, and there stood a German soldier with an automatic weapon pointing right at my gut.
Oh.
I didn't take my weapon. Probably a good thing I didn't. And so they called, the guys all called me little boy, and they come in and said, "Hey, little boy, what'd you find? Little boy, where are you? Little boy." And two of them started coming looking for me. And they got part way down the steps. They had their weapons. And he saw that they had weapons, so he laid his down.
Oh.
It just, I was just petrified.
Once
I couldn't
again,
even talk.
I've never stared down the business end of a gun. I can't imagine what that must have been like.
Especially an automatic.
Yeah. Oh.
You'd get about 10 shots before you could breathe.
Yeah.
But I think his troops had left, and I think he was hiding. I think he had enough of the war. But he didn't have to point the gun at me if he had enough.
Did you ever have much interaction with the local civilians as you progressed at all?
Oh, yes. One time when we I forget where it was we stopped, but anyway, it was a farmhouse. A lot of the farmhouses had their chimneys, fireplaces. But at the top of the chimneys, they usually made a smokehouse out of it. They'd smoke hams or whatever it was, We stopped there, and I couldn't speak any German, but a lot of the guys could make out and make signs and do what they wanted. And we wanted some of that ham, and we noticed they had some eggs. And so we made a trade. We didn't take it from them. We traded with them. We had what they called at that time, we finally got into a new kind of ration. They called it 10-in-1. And it was a can of ham, a can of bacon, sugar, coffee, desserts. But the 10-in-1 was one ration, but it supplied 5 men. So we'd store them. So we traded to them a can of bacon and some corn and some peaches and coffee. They couldn't get any coffee. They had to make their own coffee. It wasn't coffee, made out of chicory. We traded that for a piece of ham and some fresh eggs. And we found a basket, put I think it was about 8 or 9 eggs in that basket. And we had to leave. And we decided that the loader should carry the eggs. So he had that basket of eggs. We went across these open fields just bouncing and shooting. And we finally got stopped. He said, "I ain't carrying no more of them goddamn eggs." He didn't break any. But we made it that night. We scrambled some ham and eggs. It was pretty good eating, But we weren't, the guys I was with really didn't rob from the civilians. We give, if we had something. I don't know, I suppose you could call that collaborating with the enemy if you wanted to. But, and then another place we stopped, and a lady come walking up, and I couldn't understand what she's talking about. We was washing some of her clothes, and I had a couple oranges laying there. And one of the guys said, "She wants an orange." Have both of them, you want them, I give them to her. That afternoon, I don't know, it was about 3 o'clock, here that woman come back. She baked an orange cake with orange icing. She had half a cake and give it to me. So we had cake and coffee. So you worked with them, Yeah. There was a lot of them that were dyed in the wool Adolf Hitler people. and most of those were SS troops. They were that way from the time they were born till they were shot or taken prisoner.
Right.
And another time I made a turn in the middle of the night at the tank. We had a little road. Of course, I had the gun off the side, and I didn't turn fast enough. And I poked the damn gun barrel right through the house, went right over their kitchen table. Here, the people come flying out of the house, you know. Of course, you know, then you have things you can laugh about.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And another time we stopped for a lunch, and I went into a shed, and it was a barn. And we got out of ration, sitting there eating. I was like on a bale of hay. It only wasn't a bale of hay. And I finished my lunch, took my hand, rubbed down like that. And I thought, that's not hay. And I moved it. The dead German soldier, and I was wiping my face. Almost lost my lobster. But there's one thing about it: when you're young and you're moving fast, you get over it in a hurry. If you dwell on it, you got a problem. I thought.
Yeah.
We had some infantry that had come up, and it was especially at the Maginot Line, they'd fought enough. And that one guy shot 3 times before he finally hit himself in the foot. And of course, you're not supposed to get honorable discharge from stuff like that. And you're not supposed to get a disability, but I imagine they did. I don't know. You can only, some guys can only take so much.
Yeah, right. Oh, sure.
I had a lieutenant that was after the second day he rode with me. I never did see him get on. Where in the hell he went? He just threw up and left. Just couldn't handle it, you know. And it was especially bad when you're getting shot at and you can't see where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And those Germans were good. They could take that 88 and they could pinpoint a soldier coming across the field and hit him with it. Wow. You know, about that big around.
Yeah, right.
They were good.
Yeah.
And of course everything, they zeroed in on everything. And of course that's why when we went into town, the first place we looked was at the steeple or a high house or smokestack. That's we took that out, tried to take that out first. Because that's where artillery fire would come from, a lot of times. Not all the time, but. And then most of the German people knew we were coming. How they knew it, I don't know. I suppose the soldiers had told them. Had left. But our medics, they patched him up if they were wounded, you know. We had to stop at a little place, and the medic went in there. A man was hollering his wife was hit by shrapnel. Now, I shouldn't tell this, but it was he went in, and she was hit high up on the groin. It was split right there. He went in, and he sewed her up and patched her up, and he come back out laughing. And he said, I just didn't know which gash to sew up. But you know, if you don't have something funny once in a while,
yeah.
Of course, you shouldn't have said that. But
do you remember where you were when you heard about VE Day and the thought, okay, I'd made it, I'd survived this war when the Germans surrendered?
Yeah, that's when I lost the tank. It fell to the bridge. We were in Czechoslovakia. That's when they give it. And then we were back in, I think it was Tischenreuth, Germany, when we found out that the Japanese had given up.
Well, that was May, and the Japanese didn't give up till August. So you were stationed there that whole summer?
We were doing cleanup work.
Oh, geez. You were there quite a bit after the Germany had surrendered then.
Yeah, we were taking care of German soldiers.
Oh, that's right, okay.
POWs, getting ready to go to Nuremberg trials. Just a lot of cleanup work, and that's when they told us we were going to have a new tank. We were going to South Pacific.
Right, okay. Yes, you did say that.
So then, after they surrendered, and they said we wasn't going, why then they made me acting first sergeant for a while of the company there. Of course, I didn't have nothing to do, you know. So off to about 2 or 3 miles north of the little town he's at, one of the guys said, you know, there's some elk up in that timber up there? I know. He said, so he went over and talked to the mess sergeant. He said, if we're lucky enough to get some elk, would you cook it? Oh yeah. So I went over to the motor pool and I commandeered 5 Jeeps and I got some guys and we drove up there and I think we got 3 elk out of them. Of course the elk there are only little things like this, you know. But we took them back to cleaned them out and the mess sergeant cooked them up and the guys all had elk that night.
Huh. Huh.
It was something different.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I was in the Bavarian mountains, the Germans that was off limits to civilians. That was just strictly military, high echelon. There's all kinds of hunting lodges, all kinds of streams. We got some fishing lines, and we caught the god awfulest trout you ever saw. We bundled them up and took them back down to the mess sergeant. He fried fish out of them, you know. But it was quite an elaborate thing. We was sitting there that day, we were still on patrol, rounding them up. And it come over the radio, there is a German fighter jet approaching. We had heard they had one, but we had never seen one.
Oh, right, okay.
And so I swung around, and I got up on top. He said, it's coming right up the hill, right towards you. I got on the 50 caliber machine gun. I thought, well, we'll get him. I never even got a shot of him. He went right about 100 feet high.
Wow. That must have been a sight.
Oh, yeah, because we had never seen
Right,
it. And
yeah.
it was probably going about 300 miles an hour, where ours went about 100.
Right, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And so it wasn't all bad, you know. But you had to have fun. We got trapped a lot of times, our TDs did. We went into a little town, we cleared the road and got into the town, we run out of fuel. And we radioed back, we need fuel, and they said, we can't bring you fuel because you're cut off, you're stranded.
Jeez.
So we sat there 4 days. The Germans had moved in behind us. We sat there 3 or 4 days and they finally got the road open and they come in with some fuel. We got out of that one. Every place we went, we got trapped or got in some damn predicament. And I was just plain lucky. That's all I was lucky.
Hmm.
You know, I got out of a tank one day and we had got stopped at an ambush and had 3 big guns set up and a tank guns and they shooting at it. And I couldn't move, so I got out of the tank, went around the back. I think I had to go to the bathroom or something. But I started down, I heard that snap go by. When you heard a bullet snap, it was close. Do you know what the snap is?
No,
As the bullet goes through the air like this, it leaves a V, and when that comes back together, it snaps, a loud snap. But if you're far away, you won't hear it. Close, you'll hear it. I heard it. A sniper almost got me. So I ducked back behind the tank.
Man.
Anything else there, you know?
Well, we'll start to wind down this interview then,
Okay.
Max. Over the years, did you ever keep in touch with any of your people from your crew, or have go to
No.
any sort of reunions or anything like that?
The 773rd reunion was always back around New Jersey, or because that's where the most of the outfit was from, the
Uh-huh.
replacements.
Uh-huh.
And so I always got a letter to go back, but I never did go back. And then I got a letter last year or year before that they had abandoned it because only 2 showed up. So then I got a letter from the 90th Infantry Division that they're going to have a reunion, but it's going to be, I don't know when. But I never really had a hankering to go back to one because it wasn't anybody I knew.
Yeah, right, yeah, because you had such turnover.
They're gone.
Yeah.
And of course, the guys in our outfit, they all had names. You know, one of them we called Hoot, and one we called Rabbit, and one we called the Rabbi. I went by Little Boy because I was the baby of their outfit.
Yeah, yeah.
And, but I'm sure they were about 10 years older than I was.
Yeah, okay.
So I am sure that they would be 95
Right.
and
right,
on up now
Right,
if they were living.
right.
So I don't know.
Have you ever had a chance to go back to Europe and retrace any of your battle routes or anything like that?
I haven't. I see the pictures. I got. I sometimes think I'd like to, but then I bet I'd get there and I wouldn't recognize it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I don't think I would recognize it because when we went into Bastogne and there wasn't nothing left, just a chimney here or a chimney there, you know, and I can still see some of the open fields with all the GIs laying there, thousands of them, hundreds of them,
Still etched in your
just
mind.
slaughtered.
Yeah,
And then I think too, I wonder about the cleanup detail. How those people stood to do that,
yeah, yeah.
to identify. You know, one place there at the Battle of the Bulge, I was walking along, and that's where we thought we saw the tanks, but there weren't our tanks next day, and there's a boot laying there, and I give it a kick, and it didn't kick. Well, hell, still had a foot and part of the leg in it. You know, a direct hit. I don't know. I don't know how they could do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
At least it was cold. That preserved the people. It's just a matter of putting them all together. And it was so cold there, you know, just, I didn't, my wife still gets mad at me because I have a meal. I said I want it hot. I don't want a cold meal. We never had a meal after we got in service, you know, only what we did.
Right, right.
And we stopped at one little place and we were going to stay in another house. We were all in there, we heard this shooting, you know. And we got to get a counterattack. Grabbed the guns, ran outside. And here's one of the guys on his hands and knees. And he had his carbine. And he was shooting the chicken. We said, what the hell are you doing? He said, I'm trying to kill the chicken. He said, you can't hit that chicken? He said, well, I'm trying to hit it in the head. He finally hit it, and they cleaned it. And they put that thing in a pot, and they cooked it. And somewhere in that house, they found some kind of noodles or something. And they put it, well, of course, they cooked it too fast. We went to eat that thing, it was just like eating shoe leather, so tough. But the broth and the noodles were pretty good. Here he was out there hand me trying to shoot that chicken.
Well, let's talk a little bit, we'll, like I said, we'll finish up here real soon. Just real briefly, your post-war life. How was it now coming home after all you'd been through, transitioning back to a quiet civilian life? Was that much of a transition for you?
It wasn't
adjustment?
for me.
No? Okay.
It wasn't. Well, I think one thing was that if most of the GIs would have just thought, well, now you're on your own. Nobody's going to tell you what to do, where to go, and how to do it. Of course, the first thing, you know, you did was try to get some clothes, you know. And then the next thing was a job. You went to get a job. And then it just seemed to fall into place because everybody was in that same position. So then I joined the VFW, and we had a lot of fun today. But, you know, we never talked about the service. We never, I don't remember ever talking about any of my dealings in the service or in the war until the last year, until my girls started asking about it. It just seemed to kind of evaporate.
Yeah, huh.
And which is good.
Yeah, yeah.
You see all that stuff, you know,
Yeah.
and all the wounded. And people say it's so bad that their loved ones or whoever it is get killed in the service. And it is a terrible thing. I'd a lot sooner get killed than be in a VA hospital for 40 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What did you go on to do as far as a career?
Then
and
I
such?
went into the grocery business. I went from one grocery store to another, and I finally ended up being with King Soopers for 20-some years. And so then I got married after I got out of service, and I had 3 children, and then later on we divorced, and then Ray and I got married, and she has 2 children. And so we've been married 38 years now. But I was going to tell you on the pictures I got there, my daughter was there, and both daughters, and her husband, and my daughter's friend. And we were sitting in one of the little restaurants there by Lincoln Memorial, having something to drink, and a guy was sitting there with us, and that guy delivered my 3 children. He was a doctor.
Is that right?
And he delivered Rain's 2 children. He had went back to that. So, you know, it's such a small world,
Yeah.
Dr. Rockema.
Huh. I'll be darned.
But, you know, it's funny how things happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One question I always like to ask as we finish up is, how do you think that period of time played into your life, affected your life, changed your thoughts at all, or did it, or was it just purely a?
Well, I think it was something that had to be. You know, I don't really think that the war changed my life, other than that 3-year period. That changed my life.
In what ways? I mean, what ways do
Well, it was a different type of living. You know, I wasn't used to getting shot at, and I wasn't used to shooting somebody.
Who was?
And I wasn't used to try to dodge a bullet and do my own laundry and find a place to go at the bathroom, do my own cooking, and hoping that I made it through another day. But I don't know. We skirted Dachau, so we didn't get to see all the ovens, you know, which is all right with me.
Yeah.
I'll let somebody else do that. But and then of course that spurred the economy, the war. The economy was bad. Things were going downhill, and so all the factories got to operate again, and when we jumping around when in France, a lot when they got close to Paris, they had a lot of buildings there where they manufactured different things, and of course a lot of the French were unhappy that we were there because the Germans had come in and took over and made different factories and put all those people to work. Now they were going to be at that work, so they really. You never knew which side of the fence they were on. And you had to be careful everywhere. You couldn't trust a soul, you know, nobody. Because you might see somebody walking and it might not be one of your GIs. It might be a German in a GI uniform. And they had a lot of that. They infiltrated and got a lot of that. And so it wasn't that they could do that much damage. It was a harassment. And something for everybody always thought in the back of their mind, is one of them going to sneak up on me?
Wow. Well, as we close her down here, is there any closing statement of any sort that you'd like to make to finish off this tape?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I've covered everything, I guess.
Okay.
When you get to be 85, you don't think too good.
Yeah, thought it went very well. But well, Max, I really want to thank you for sitting down and telling your story today. More importantly, though, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, this was taken just as I was being discharged down in Fort Logan, Denver. That was my final picture. Okay, this is a picture of my tank destroyer. We had been in Czechoslovakia. We came back and they gave us orders to go back up into Czechoslovakia. I'd already crossed the bridge once, and when I come back through, the planks give away, the tanks rolled over, the hatch hit me on the head, and you can see the Band-Aid on my head. So we left the tank there and I rode on. I've never seen it since.
That's you sitting on the tank there on top?
Clear at the back, yeah. That's it.
Well, what a way to have gone out of the war if
yeah,
it had been worse. Huh?
Okay, that was a picture of me. We were going from one position to the other, and it's still kind of cold. We'd stop there to refuel and get some food and ammunition and move on. Okay, this is our route where we landed from the United States down through Scotland, England, across the harbor, Utah Beach, Normandy, come on up through, round by Paris, on over, across the Rhine, and up into Belgium. That is the Battle of the Bulge. And back across and over in here is where the concentration camps were. And then we went into Czechoslovakia and back out, and that ended the war. And then we came out of there and went south into Le Havre and come up through the back over through the Atlantic Ocean, home. That is a picture back at the memorial in Washington, D.C. of Jody, myself, and my other daughter, Roxy.
And this is during when you took the honor flight back to...
The honor flight back to Washington, D.C.